In the spring of 2024, during the demolition of the abandoned Blackwood Mansion in Salem, Massachusetts, construction worker Miguel Santos made a discovery that would unravel one of New England's most enduring missing person cases. Hidden beneath layers of dust and decay in the mansion's attic, Santos found a small teddy bear, its brown fur matted with age but remarkably well preserved. The toy would have been unremarkable except for one chilling detail. Protruding from a carefully reopened seam along the bear's back was a tiny slip of paper, yellowed with age and covered in the desperate scrawl of a child's handwriting. The note, when carefully extracted and examined, contained only 7 words. "Uncle Charles has the other children too. Dr." Rebecca Thornton, a forensic historian specializing in cold cases from the early 20th century, was contacted by the Salem Police Department when preliminary investigation revealed that the teddy bear might be connected to the disappearance of 7-year-old Emma Blackwood in November 1922. The Blackwood case had been one of the most extensively investigated missing person cases in Massachusetts history, generating hundreds of newspaper articles, numerous false leads, and decades of speculation about what had happened to the young girl who vanished from her bedroom on a snowy November night more than a century ago. The Blackwood family had been among Salem's most prominent residents during the early 1920s, their wealth built upon a successful textile manufacturing business that employed nearly a quarter of the town's working population. Jonathan Blackwood, Emma's father, had inherited the family enterprise from his father and had expanded it into one of New England's most profitable textile operations. The family's mansion on Chestnut Street served as a symbol of their prosperity and social standing. Its grand Victorian architecture and meticulously maintained gardens representing the pinnacle of Salem's industrial success. The mansion itself was an architectural marvel of its era, featuring 47 rooms spread across 4 floors, including a grand ballroom that had hosted some of the most elaborate social events in Massachusetts history. The building's design incorporated the latest innovations in domestic technology, including electric lighting throughout, central heating, and an elaborate internal communication system that allowed family members to summon servants from any room. Most significantly for the events that would unfold, the mansion's complex layout included numerous hidden passages, concealed storage areas, and architectural features that had been designed to accommodate the privacy needs of one of Salem's wealthiest families. Emma Blackwood had been described by contemporary accounts as an unusually bright and precocious child, advanced for her age in both academic pursuits and social awareness. The local newspaper, the Salem Chronicle, had featured her in several articles about the town's most promising young residents, describing her exceptional performance in school and her remarkable ability to memorize and recite lengthy passages of poetry. Her tutors had noted that she possessed an almost photographic memory and could recall conversations and events with startling accuracy, a trait that would prove significant in understanding the circumstances of her disappearance. The child's daily routine had been carefully structured to provide her with the educational and social experiences appropriate for a member of Salem's elite families. She spent her mornings with Miss Catherine Worthington, her governess, studying literature, mathematics, and French. Her afternoons were devoted to music lessons, art instruction, and carefully supervised social interactions with children from other prominent families. Evenings were typically spent with her family, participating in dinner conversations that were designed to develop her social skills and cultural awareness. The night of Emma's disappearance, November 15, 1922, had been documented in exhaustive detail by police investigators who interviewed every member of the household staff and examined every possible entry point to the family mansion. According to the official police report, Emma had been put to bed at 8 o'clock by her governess, Miss Catherine Worthington, who had read her a bedtime story and ensured that she was comfortable in her room on the mansion's 2nd floor. The child's parents had been entertaining guests in the parlor until nearly midnight, providing them with solid alibis for the time period when Emma must have disappeared. The evening's social gathering had been particularly elaborate, featuring dinner for 12 prominent Salem families, followed by cards and musical entertainment that extended well past the household's normal bedtime. The guest list included the mayor, several local business leaders, and representatives from Boston's textile industry who were visiting to discuss potential business partnerships. The large number of witnesses to Jonathan and Margaret Blackwood's whereabouts during the critical hours made it impossible for investigators to suspect the child's parents of involvement in her disappearance. The discovery of Emma's empty bedroom the following morning had launched one of the most intensive missing person investigations in Massachusetts history. Police had found no signs of forced entry, no evidence of struggle, and no indication that Emma had left her room voluntarily. Her nightgown was missing, but her day clothes remained neatly folded in her dresser. Most puzzling was the condition of her bedroom itself. Toys scattered across the floor as if she had been playing, her bed covers thrown back as if she had gotten up suddenly, and her beloved teddy bear lying abandoned near the window as if it had been dropped in haste. The teddy bear, a gift from her Uncle Charles on her 6th birthday, had been Emma's constant companion for over a year. The toy had been crafted by the prestigious German manufacturer Steiff, featuring the company's distinctive button-in-ear trademark and constructed from the finest mohair available during the post-war period. Emma had named the bear Theodore, after President Roosevelt, and had created elaborate stories about the adventures they shared. The bear's placement near the window, rather than in Emma's bed where it usually spent the night, suggested that something had interrupted her normal bedtime routine. Dr. Thornton's analysis of the police files revealed numerous inconsistencies and overlooked details that suggested the original investigation had failed to pursue several promising leads. Most significantly, the investigators had never thoroughly examined the background of Charles Blackwood, Jonathan's younger brother, who had been living in the family mansion since returning from military service in France following the end of World War I. Charles had been present in the house on the night of Emma's disappearance, but his account of his activities had never been subjected to rigorous scrutiny. Charles Blackwood had returned from the war in the spring of 1919, bearing visible scars from shrapnel wounds and invisible psychological trauma that manifested in erratic behavior and periods of severe depression. The family had welcomed him into their home as both an act of charity and a recognition of his military service, providing him with comfortable quarters on the mansion's 3rd floor and a nominal position in the family business that required minimal actual work. His presence in the household had been viewed as temporary, a compassionate arrangement that would provide him with stability while he recovered from his wartime experiences. The official police report noted that Charles Blackwood had claimed to be reading in the library until approximately 11 o'clock, after which he had retired to his room on the mansion's 3rd floor. His alibi had been corroborated by the household staff, who reported seeing him in the library during the evening hours. However, Dr. Thornton's review of the case files revealed that no one had actually spoken with Charles after 10:30, creating a window of opportunity that had never been adequately investigated. More disturbing were the references in contemporary newspaper accounts to Charles Blackwood's eccentric behavior and unusual interest in local children. The Salem Chronicle had published several brief mentions of Charles's involvement with youth organizations and his frequent visits to local schools, activities that were portrayed positively at the time but took on more sinister implications when viewed through the lens of modern understanding of predatory behavior. The newspaper accounts described Charles as a devoted uncle who took particular interest in children's welfare and education, often volunteering to supervise youth activities and organizing educational excursions for local families. If you're as intrigued as we are by these secrets of the past, consider subscribing to not miss any of our future investigations. Dr. Thornton's investigation expanded to include examination of other missing person cases in the Salem area during the 1920s. Her research revealed a disturbing pattern of child disappearances that had occurred during the period when Charles Blackwood was living in the area. Between 1920 and 1925, 7 children had vanished from Salem and surrounding communities under circumstances that bore striking similarities to Emma's case. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of struggle, and no witnesses to the actual disappearances. The missing children included Tommy Morrison, age 6, who disappeared from his family's home in nearby Marblehead in August 1920. Tommy had been found missing from his bedroom on a warm summer morning, with his window open and his favorite toy soldier left on the windowsill. Local police had initially suspected that the boy had climbed out the window to play and had become lost, but extensive searches of the surrounding area had yielded no trace of him. The Morrison family had offered substantial rewards for information about their son's whereabouts, but no credible leads had ever emerged. Sarah Henderson, age 8, had vanished from her bedroom in Beverly in March 1921 under circumstances that were remarkably similar to Emma's later disappearance. Sarah's family had discovered her missing on a cold spring morning, with her bed unmade and her clothes scattered as if she had dressed hurriedly in the dark. Most puzzling was the discovery that the family's back door had been found unlocked, though no one could recall leaving it unlatched. Sarah's disappearance had prompted the Beverly police to conduct house-to-house searches and question numerous local residents, but the investigation had produced no useful information. The pattern continued with the disappearances of 5 other children between 1921 and 1924. Michael O'Brien from Lynn, age 7, Ruth Patterson from Peabody, age 6, David Chen from Salem's Chinatown district, age 8, Maria Santos from a Portuguese fishing family in Gloucester, age 5, and Timothy Walsh from an Irish immigrant family in Lawrence, age 9. Each case had been investigated separately by local police departments, and no investigator had recognized the pattern that connected these disappearances across different communities and ethnic groups. Dr. Thornton's analysis revealed that all of the missing children had several characteristics in common beyond their ages and the circumstances of their disappearances. Each child had been described by family members and teachers as unusually intelligent and mature for their age. All had come from families that, while not necessarily wealthy, were stable and loving environments where the children received attention and educational opportunities. Most significantly, Dr. Thornton discovered that Charles Blackwood had verifiable connections to each of the communities where the children had disappeared. The investigation revealed that Charles had been involved in various charitable and educational activities throughout the Salem area during the early 1920s. He had served as a volunteer reading instructor at the Marblehead Public Library, where Tommy Morrison's family had been regular patrons. He had organized educational excursions for children in Beverly, including trips that Sarah Henderson had participated in just weeks before her disappearance. His involvement with a veterans support organization had taken him to Lynn, Peabody, and Lawrence on multiple occasions, always coinciding with periods when local children had vanished. The pattern of disappearances ended abruptly in December 1925, when Charles Blackwood left Salem to accept a position with a textile company in North Carolina. Dr. Thornton's research into his subsequent activities revealed that he had continued to move frequently throughout the southeastern United States, never remaining in any location for more than 2 or 3 years. Most significantly, her analysis of newspaper archives from the cities where Charles had lived revealed similar patterns of unexplained child disappearances that corresponded to his periods of residence. The teddy bear discovered in the Blackwood Mansion attic provided the first physical evidence connecting Charles to Emma's disappearance. Forensic examination of the toy revealed traces of period-appropriate fabric and stuffing materials consistent with toys manufactured in the early 1920s. More importantly, handwriting analysis of the note found inside the bear confirmed that it had been written by a child approximately 7 years old using a pencil and paper that matched materials available in the Blackwood household during 1922. The note itself, when subjected to detailed forensic analysis, revealed additional information that had not been apparent during initial examination. Advanced imaging techniques revealed faint impressions on the paper that suggested Emma had written additional text that had been erased or had faded beyond normal visibility. Computer enhancement of these impressions revealed fragments of what appeared to be a longer message: "Took me to the special room," and "other children crying," and "promised Mama would come." The revelation that Emma had managed to hide a message inside her teddy bear suggested that she had possessed enough awareness of her danger to attempt to leave evidence of her situation. The sophistication required to open the bear's seam, insert the note, and re-sew the opening indicated that Emma had received help from someone else, possibly another child who had been held captive with her. The implications were staggering. Emma's disappearance had not been an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of child abduction that had been operating under the cover of Charles Blackwood's respectable social position. Dr. Thornton's investigation of the Blackwood Mansion's architectural plans revealed the existence of several hidden spaces and storage areas that had not been thoroughly searched during the original investigation. The mansion's Victorian design included multiple concealed chambers that had been used for storage and servants' quarters, some of which were accessible through hidden panels and concealed stairways that would have been difficult for investigators to locate without detailed knowledge of the building's construction. The mansion's original architect, Harrison Whitmore, had designed the building with numerous features that reflected the Victorian era's obsession with privacy and domestic security. Hidden passages connected different wings of the house, allowing servants to move between floors without being seen by family members or guests. Secret panels provided access to storage areas where valuable documents and family treasures could be hidden from potential burglars. Most significantly, the basement level included several rooms that had been designed as safe spaces where the family could retreat during emergencies. One particularly significant discovery came when Dr. Thornton located the original architectural drawings for the mansion in the Salem Historical Society's archives. The plans showed a concealed room beneath the mansion's main staircase that had been designed as a safe room for storing valuable documents and family treasures. The room's entrance was hidden behind what appeared to be a decorative panel in the library wall, the same room where Charles Blackwood had claimed to be reading on the night of Emma's disappearance. Modern ground-penetrating radar examination of the mansion revealed anomalies beneath the foundation that suggested the presence of additional underground spaces that had not appeared on the original architectural plans. These chambers appeared to have been excavated after the mansion's initial construction, possibly during the period when Charles Blackwood was living in the house. The discovery of these hidden spaces raised the possibility that Emma and other missing children had been held in concealed areas beneath the mansion before being moved to other locations. The investigation took a personal turn for Dr. Thornton when she began experiencing vivid dreams that seemed to provide insight into Emma's final days. These nocturnal visions featured detailed images of the Blackwood mansion's interior as it had appeared in 1922, complete with period-appropriate furnishings and decorations that matched contemporary photographs. Most disturbing were the dreams that showed Emma and other children confined in underground chambers beneath the mansion, their terrified faces illuminated by candlelight as they waited for rescue that would never come. The dreams possessed a quality of historical accuracy that allowed Dr. Thornton to identify specific details about the mansion's layout and the Blackwood family's daily routines that had not appeared in any written records. She began to document these visions with the same methodical approach she applied to her academic research, recognizing that they might provide insights into aspects of the case that had been overlooked by conventional investigation. In one particularly vivid dream, Dr. Thornton observed Emma in what appeared to be a basement room, carefully opening her teddy bear's seam with a small sewing kit, while other children watched. The vision showed Emma writing her desperate note by candlelight, her small hands trembling as she formed each letter. Most heartbreaking was the image of Emma kissing the bear before hiding it in a corner of the room, as if she somehow knew that the toy would eventually carry her message to safety, even if she could not. As we delve deeper into these mysteries, we invite you to join our community of explorers of the inexplicable. Subscribe and become part of the search for truth. Dr. Thornton's research expanded to include investigation of Charles Blackwood's military service records, seeking to understand what experiences during World War I might have contributed to his apparent transformation from a respected member of Salem society into a predator who targeted children. His service file, obtained through military archives, revealed that he had served with distinction in France, but had been hospitalized for several months following what contemporary records described as shell shock and nervous exhaustion. Charles had enlisted in the Massachusetts National Guard in 1917, motivated by patriotic duty and family expectations that the younger son of a prominent family should serve his country during wartime. His unit had been deployed to France in early 1918, where they participated in several major offensive operations, including the Second Battle of the Marne and the Meuse-Argonne offensive. Charles' service record showed that he had performed his duties competently and had been recommended for promotion to sergeant before his psychological breakdown in the autumn of 1918. The medical records from Charles's military hospitalization documented symptoms that modern psychiatrists would recognize as severe post-traumatic stress disorder, including hallucinations, violent outbursts, and periods of dissociation where he seemed to lose awareness of his surroundings. Most concerning were reports that he had developed an obsession with protecting innocence and had expressed beliefs that children possessed special spiritual qualities that could provide comfort to those who had witnessed the horrors of warfare. The hospital records included detailed notes from Dr. Edmund Fletcher, the military psychiatrist who had treated Charles during his recovery. Dr. Fletcher's observations revealed that Charles had developed a complex delusional system that revolved around the belief that children represented a form of spiritual purity that could cleanse the psychological contamination he felt he had acquired during combat. The psychiatrist noted that Charles spoke frequently about finding ways to preserve innocence and protect purity from the corrupting influences of an adult world that had demonstrated its capacity for unprecedented violence. Dr. Thornton's consultation with military historians revealed that Charles's unit had been involved in some of the most brutal fighting of the war, including battles where they had encountered evidence of atrocities committed against civilian populations, including children. The psychological trauma of these experiences, combined with his pre-existing psychological vulnerabilities, appeared to have created conditions that led to his subsequent predatory behavior. The unit's war diary, preserved in military archives, documented several incidents that had particularly affected Charles's psychological state. In July 1918, his company had discovered a destroyed French village where German forces had killed numerous civilians, including families with young children. Charles had been assigned to help bury the victims, an experience that his fellow soldiers noted had affected him more severely than other traumatic events they had witnessed together. More significantly, the war diary revealed that Charles had formed unusually intense attachments to French children who had been orphaned by the fighting. He had volunteered to help care for children in refugee camps and had spent his leave time organizing activities and educational programs for young war victims. His fellow soldiers had initially viewed this as admirable charitable work, but some had begun to express concern about the intensity of Charles's emotional investment in these relationships. The investigation revealed that Charles had maintained correspondence with several other veterans who had served in his unit, men who had also experienced severe psychological trauma during the war. These letters, preserved in the personal papers of one veteran's family, revealed discussions about finding ways to recapture lost innocence and preserve purity through relationships with children who had not been contaminated by adult knowledge of warfare and violence. The correspondence, spanning from 1919 to 1924, documented the gradual development of a shared delusion among several traumatized veterans who believed they could somehow heal their psychological wounds by surrounding themselves with children who represented the innocence they felt they had lost during their military service. The letters revealed plans for establishing what they termed sanctuaries, where traumatized veterans could interact with children in environments that would provide therapeutic benefits for both groups. Dr. Thornton's analysis of these communications revealed that Charles's actions may have been motivated not by conventional pedophilic impulses, but by a psychotic belief system that convinced him he was protecting children by removing them from a world that would inevitably corrupt their innocence. This interpretation was supported by the fact that none of the missing children showed evidence of sexual abuse, suggesting that Charles's motivations were psychological rather than predatory in the conventional sense. The discovery of additional evidence in the Blackwood Mansion's hidden chambers provided disturbing confirmation of this theory. Excavation of the concealed rooms revealed children's belongings that had been carefully preserved as if they were religious relics, clothing that had been cleaned and folded with obsessive care, toys that showed signs of repeated cleaning and maintenance, and personal items that had been arranged in shrine-like displays. The hidden chamber beneath the mansion's main staircase had been transformed into what could only be described as a shrine to childhood innocence. The walls were lined with photographs of children, some recognizable as the missing children from the Salem area, others apparently collected from unknown sources. The images had been arranged in elaborate patterns that suggested ritualistic significance, with candles and flowers placed before them as if they were religious icons. Most chilling was the discovery of a journal that Charles had apparently kept during his residence in the mansion. The entries, written in increasingly erratic handwriting, documented his growing conviction that he had been chosen to serve as a guardian for children who needed protection from the corrupting influences of modern society. The journal revealed his belief that by removing children from their families, he was performing a sacred duty that would preserve their spiritual purity while providing him with the healing presence he needed to recover from his war trauma. The journal entries described elaborate rituals that Charles had developed for consecrating the children who came under his protection. These ceremonies involved symbolic cleansing processes, the assignment of new names that reflected their purified status, and the establishment of daily routines that were designed to maintain their innocence while providing Charles with the emotional comfort he believed their presence could offer. The most disturbing entries describe Charles's belief that the children who died under his care had achieved a form of spiritual transcendence that allowed them to escape the corruption of adult existence. He wrote about conducting funeral ceremonies for children who had graduated to higher spiritual states, describing their deaths not as tragedies, but as successful completions of their purification process. The journal suggested that Charles viewed child mortality not as a failure of his care, but as evidence of his success in protecting them from spiritual contamination. The final entries in Charles's journal, dated December 1925, revealed his growing awareness that his activities had attracted the attention of local authorities and his decision to relocate to areas where he could continue his sacred work without interference. The journal concluded with his plans for establishing a more permanent sanctuary in a remote location, where he could care for larger numbers of children without the risk of discovery by families or police who might not understand the spiritual significance of his mission. Dr. Thornton's investigation revealed that Charles had indeed established such a sanctuary in the mountains of North Carolina, where he had purchased an isolated farm that served as the base for his continued abduction and imprisonment of children. Local newspaper archives documented several missing person cases in the area during the late 1920s and early 1930s, all involving children who had disappeared under circumstances similar to the Salem cases. The North Carolina property, located in a remote valley near the town of Boone, had been purchased under an assumed name using funds that Charles had embezzled from the Blackwood family business over several years. The farm consisted of nearly 200 acres of isolated mountain land, with a main house, several outbuildings and cave systems that provided natural hiding places for Charles's captives. The location had been chosen specifically for its remoteness and the difficulty that law enforcement would face in conducting searches of the mountainous terrain. Local residents near the North Carolina farm had reported strange activities during the years when Charles operated his sanctuary. Children from the area had described seeing other children working in the farm's fields, but these sightings had been dismissed as imagination since no children from local families were missing. Strange lights and sounds had been reported coming from the farm at night, but the property's isolation had prevented neighbors from investigating these phenomena. The North Carolina sanctuary had operated until 1934, when Charles's death from tuberculosis had left the surviving children under his protection to fend for themselves in the isolated mountain location. Local authorities had eventually discovered the abandoned farm and had rescued 3 children who had survived nearly a decade of captivity, though their psychological trauma had been so severe that they had been unable to provide coherent accounts of their experiences. The rescued children, ranging in age from 12 to 16, had been found in a state of severe malnutrition and psychological distress that suggested years of isolation and abuse. Medical examinations revealed evidence of chronic neglect, inadequate nutrition, and psychological conditioning that had left them unable to remember their original names or families. The children had been given new identities by Charles and had been taught to view their captivity as a form of spiritual privilege that set them apart from ordinary society. The rescued children had been placed in state institutions where they had received care for their physical and psychological injuries, but records from these facilities revealed that they had never fully recovered from their experiences. 2 had died young from medical complications related to malnutrition and abuse, while the 3rd had lived until 1987 but had never been able to function independently or form normal social relationships. The survivor's death had occurred just months before Dr. Thornton began her investigation, eliminating the possibility of obtaining first-hand testimony about the conditions at Charles's sanctuary. Dr. Thornton's research into the fate of the other children who had disappeared during Charles's crime spree revealed that most had not survived their captivity. Excavation of the North Carolina farm had uncovered multiple burial sites containing the remains of children who had died from neglect, disease, or the psychological trauma of their imprisonment. The graves had been marked with crude wooden crosses, bearing the purified names that Charles had assigned to each child, rather than their original identities. The burial sites revealed evidence of Charles's delusional belief system in the care he had taken to preserve the children's remains. Each grave had been carefully prepared with personal belongings that Charles had believed would be needed in the afterlife, including toys, books, and items of clothing that had been cleaned and maintained with obsessive attention to detail. The graves had been arranged in patterns that suggested ritualistic significance, with the children's bodies oriented toward specific compass directions and buried at depths that corresponded to their ages at death. Forensic examination of the remains found at the North Carolina farm confirmed that the children had died from various causes related to neglect and abuse rather than from intentional violence. Malnutrition, untreated diseases, and exposure to harsh weather conditions had claimed most of the victims, while others had apparently died from the psychological trauma of prolonged captivity. The evidence suggested that Charles had genuinely believed he was providing the children with superior care, despite conditions that were objectively horrific. The discovery of Emma Blackwood's teddy bear and the note hidden within it provided closure for one of New England's most enduring mysteries, while revealing the horrifying scope of a serial predator who had operated across multiple states for more than a decade. The evidence confirmed that Emma had indeed been taken by her Uncle Charles and had likely died during the early years of his North Carolina sanctuary, though her exact fate remained unclear due to the deteriorated condition of the burial sites and the incomplete nature of the records Charles had maintained. DNA analysis of remains found at the North Carolina farm included samples that were consistent with Emma Blackwood's genetic profile, based on comparison with biological material provided by distant relatives. While definitive identification was impossible due to the age and condition of the remains, the evidence strongly suggested that Emma had been among the children who had died at Charles's sanctuary sometime between 1926 and 1930, when she would have been between 11 and 15 years old. The investigation had broader implications for understanding how psychological trauma from warfare could manifest in criminal behavior that targeted society's most vulnerable members. Charles Blackwood's case demonstrated how untreated post-traumatic stress disorder, combined with pre-existing psychological vulnerabilities, could create conditions that led to prolonged criminal activity that might not be recognized or properly investigated by law enforcement agencies, lacking understanding of complex psychological motivations. Dr. Thornton's research also revealed significant deficiencies in the original police investigations of the missing children cases. The failure to identify patterns across multiple jurisdictions, the inadequate background checks of potential suspects within victims' families, and the tendency to dismiss circumstantial evidence had allowed Charles to continue his crimes for more than a decade while maintaining his facade as a respectable member of society. The case highlighted the importance of interagency communication and coordination in investigating missing person cases that might involve predators who operated across state lines. Charles's ability to relocate frequently and establish new identities in different communities had enabled him to avoid detection while continuing to target vulnerable children. Modern computer databases and communication systems would have made it much more difficult for such a predator to operate undetected for extended periods. The discovery of Emma's teddy bear prompted renewed investigation into other cold cases from the 1920s and 1930s, leading to the identification of additional victims and the resolution of several missing person cases that had remained unsolved for nearly a century. The evidence also led to changes in police protocols for investigating child disappearances, emphasizing the importance of thoroughly examining all family members and household residents regardless of their apparent respectability or social standing. Modern forensic techniques applied to the evidence recovered from the Blackwood Mansion and the North Carolina farm provided unprecedented insight into the psychological and physical aspects of Charles's crimes. DNA analysis of biological samples recovered from the hidden chambers confirmed the presence of multiple children and provided evidence that could potentially be used to identify victims whose remains had never been located. The case also highlighted the importance of preserving physical evidence from historical crimes, as technological advances had made it possible to extract information from artifacts that had seemed uninformative when originally discovered. The teddy bear that had sat unexamined in the Blackwood Mansion attic for more than a century had ultimately provided the key to solving one of the region's most perplexing mysteries. Advanced psychological profiling techniques applied to Charles's journal entries and correspondence revealed patterns of thought and behavior that were consistent with modern understanding of predatory criminals who target children. The combination of war trauma, psychological instability, and access to potential victims had created conditions that enabled Charles to operate as a serial predator while maintaining the appearance of a respectable member of society. Dr. Thornton's final report on the Emma Blackwood case acknowledged that many questions about Charles's crimes would never be fully answered. The exact number of victims, the specific circumstances of their deaths, and the locations of additional burial sites all remained matters of speculation based on incomplete evidence and fragmentary records. However, the investigation had succeeded in providing closure for families who had spent decades wondering about the fate of their missing children. The confirmation that Emma and the other victims had not suffered abandonment or lived in uncertainty about their family's love provided some comfort to descendants who had inherited the trauma of these unsolved disappearances. The case also served as a reminder of the importance of listening to children and taking seriously their accounts of inappropriate behavior by trusted adults. Several of the missing children had reportedly expressed discomfort about Charles's behavior in the weeks before their disappearances, but these concerns had been dismissed by adults who were unwilling to question the conduct of a respected family member. The legacy of Emma Blackwood's teddy bear extended beyond its role in solving a historical mystery to include its function as a symbol of childhood innocence preserved against impossible odds. The note hidden within the toy represented not just a cry for help from a terrified child, but a testament to human resilience and the power of hope to survive even in the darkest circumstances. Modern child protection advocates have used Emma's story to illustrate the importance of creating environments where children feel safe, reporting suspicious behavior, and where their concerns are treated with appropriate seriousness. The case has become part of training materials used by social workers, teachers, and law enforcement officers to help them recognize signs of potential abuse and respond appropriately to children's disclosures. The Blackwood Mansion, demolished in 2024 to make way for a children's memorial park, will be remembered not for the wealth and social prominence it once represented, but for the dark secrets it concealed for more than a century. The memorial park will include a garden, where families can remember children who have been lost to violence, with Emma's story serving as a reminder of the importance of protecting society's most vulnerable members. The teddy bear itself has been preserved in the Salem Historical Society's archives, where it serves as a physical connection to one of the community's most tragic chapters. Visitors who see the worn toy are reminded that behind every missing child case lies a family destroyed by uncertainty and a community shaken by the loss of innocence that such crimes represent. In her concluding analysis, Dr. Thornton reflected on the profound impact that discovering Emma's note had exerted on her understanding of historical research and the responsibility that comes with uncovering long-buried truths. The investigation had forced her to confront the reality that academic objectivity becomes impossible when dealing with evidence of children's suffering, and that some historical mysteries carry emotional weights that extend far beyond their scholarly significance. The case had also demonstrated the continuing relevance of historical investigation for contemporary child protection efforts. Understanding how predators had operated in the past, how they had evaded detection, and how they had exploited social blind spots provided valuable insights for preventing similar crimes in the present. The story of Emma Blackwood's teddy bear reminds us that objects can carry messages across decades and centuries, preserving the voices of those who might otherwise be forgotten by history. The note hidden within the toy served as a bridge between past and present, allowing a murdered child to finally tell her story and ensuring that her death would not remain an unsolved mystery forever. Perhaps most importantly, Emma's case illustrates the enduring power of truth to surface despite attempts to bury it. Charles Blackwood had believed that his crimes would remain forever hidden, that his victims would disappear without trace into the anonymity of unsolved cases and forgotten tragedies. The discovery of Emma's note proved that even the most carefully concealed truths have a way of eventually emerging, carrying with them the demand for justice and the promise of closure for those who have waited generations for answers. The past guards secrets that challenge comprehension, and what we've uncovered in the shadows of Emma's disappearance reveals that some mysteries carry the voices of the innocent across the centuries, demanding that their stories be heard and their suffering acknowledged. Perhaps the real question isn't how a century-old crime was finally solved, but whether we have the courage to listen when the voiceless find ways to speak from beyond the grave. The true nature of this tragedy remains in the shadows, but we want to know your opinion. Use the comment section below and tell us what you believe. If you are fascinated by unraveling the secrets behind our darkest histories, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications, for there is much more to be unmasked.